Welcome to video clip number 3 of today's lecture. In this clip, we will discuss about the procedural aspect of specific business tax. Because we have learned about the business that are subject to specific business tax and the business that are exempted from specific business tax as well as tax rate and tax base already. And in this part, we need to understand the duties of the taxpayer in order to pay specific business tax under the Revenue Code. Actually, as we have discussed before, that under Chapter 5 of the Revenue Code, there are 21 provisions regarding specific business tax. And in 21 provisions, it can be categorized into 6 main groups. The first 2 groups that we have already discussed are about the substantive issues, including the business which are subject to specific business tax and business which are exempted from specific business tax. After we know the type of business that are subject or exempted from specific business tax, we have learned about the different tax base and different tax rate. So this is depend on the type of business activity. And now we will learn about the procedural aspect of the specific business tax, which are Group 3, Group 4, Group 5, and Group 6. Actually, in Group 3 is about the taxpayer duty regarding specific business tax. Group 4 is about the duty of the taxpayer to register specific business tax. Group 5 is about the power of tax authority, which is a revenue department, to assess or to audit your tax return. And Group 6 is about the sanction or punishment in case you are not comply with the Chapter 5 of the Revenue Code. So this is the scope of the procedural aspect of specific business tax. This is what the law provides us. But in practice, however, in this lecture, I rearrange the sequence a little bit. So I will start with the specific business tax registration, which is in Group 4 first. And then after that, after you register the SBT, we will discuss about the SBT calculation, SBE tax filing, and SBT tax payment. This is because as with a majority of countries around the world, have based on self-assessment system. This is self-assessment system mean that the system that give authorized trust and responsibility to taxpayer to calculate, to register, to calculate, and to pay and report the amount of tax to the tax authority by the taxpayer themselves. So based on this principle, I will first discuss the SBT registration first. After that, we will talk about the calculation, filing, and payment respectively. So let's start with Group 4 SBT or Specific Tax Registration. Actually, in Group 4, you can see that there are 3 main provisions regarding the specific tax registration. The first section is in Section 91/12, which is required the taxpayer to register the specific business tax. And Section 91/13 is about the exemption or the cases which shall be exempt from specific business tax registration. And following the registration process, Section 91/14 give the taxpayer an obligation to prepare a record of taxable gross receipt. This is the tax authority cannot audit or assess your tax liability without your record of taxable gross receipts. Therefore, in order to enable tax authority to audit or assess whether your tax payment is correct or not, this provision requires you to register specific business tax and prepare a record and submit or remit the record to the tax authority. This is the purpose of the SBT registration. Actually, this is in general principle. If you have a quick look at section 91/12, you will see that the revenue code require an entity or person, whoever you are. If you are subject to SBT under section 91/12 that we have discussed before, such as you might be operate pawn brokering business, for example. This article or this section require you to register specific business tax with the Revenue Department within 30 days of the first day of operation. This is quite important because if you plan to start your own business, you need to look at the tax law as well, in addition to other area of law. And even you get a license, for example, if you establish a life insurance company, you get a license from the government authority, but you need to be aware that you have only 30 days from your first day of operation to register specific business tax as the revenue office in your area. And even as we have discussed before in section 91/12, even you are an operator in a foreign country, but if you have an agent in the Kingdom of Thailand, your agent also have an obligation to register specific business tax within 30 days when you start operate the business in the kingdom as well. So this is the requirement of the SBT registration. So let's have a look at the provision a little bit. If you look at section 91/12, you can see that the law say that for a person who carry on a business that subject to specific business under section 91/2 that we have discussed before, and if the business is not exempt from a specific business tax under section 91/3 and is not exempt from specific business tax under section 91/13 that we will discuss later, this person or entity shall be liable to register specific business tax. And importantly, you need to do this within 30 days from the commencement date of the business operation. This is the importance of SBT legislation, because if you will see later, if you haven't registered the SBT within specific period of time, you will get a punishment. This is the key idea of section 91/12 under the Revenue Code. This is an example of the SBT registration form. This is so in order to register registration, you can see that you need to provide your business information in part 1 and about your business, the place of your business in part 2, and in part 3, this is important one, you need to provide the Revenue Department with your commencement date of your business, because you need to do this within 30 days. And also in part 4, you can see in the box, you need to tell them what type of business you are, that we have learned from section 91/2, right? And also you need to include and attach the additional documentation to this form. And after you register SBT, you will get a SBT certification similar to VAT with certification to show that you have already registered SBT, and you will get a SBT registration number. This is an example in practice. So whatever, if you are plan to conduct the business like under the revenue, under the section 91/2 under the revenue code, and you haven't got any exemption, you need to register SBT within 30 days from the commencement stage of your business. After we understand the duty of taxpayer to register specific business tax with the Revenue Department, now let's have a look at the taxpayer duty. So under Group 3, there are 5 main provisions, but the 3 main provisions including section 91/7, it is about a person that shall be liable to SBT or jointly liable to SBT. Section 91/8 is about the duty of the taxpayer to calculate the SBT from the tax base, and the right to appeal against the assessment of SBT in case you disagree with the tax authority. Actually, in section 91/H, it just provides a general method for calculation, but there are 2 specific business that need to calculate based on a special method, which are the case of selling security and the case of sale of immovable property. So section 91/9 and section 91/10 provide a special method in case of selling of security and selling of immovable property respectively. So therefore, in other case, you can look at section 91/8, but in case of selling security and selling of immovable property, you need to look at section 91/9 and section 91/10. And the last provision under this group is section 91/11, which refer to a refund of specific business tax. The key point is just the period, like 3 years. If you entitled for a refund, you need to apply it within 3 years. So this is the key main provision under the third group of specific procedural aspect of a specific business tax regarding the taxpayer duty. So let's have a look at now we have learned about tax registration within 30 days from the commencement state of business. Now let's have a look at tax calculation and tax filing and tax payment together. Actually, as we have learned in video clip number 2, we have learned about the various specific type of business that are subject to SBT in section 91/2. So that person in section 91/2 have an obligation or duty to calculate specific business tax based on the tax base and tax rate that we have learned under section 91/5 and 91/6. So you can see that each provision relate to each other, like because we have learned that our country is based on self-assessment system. This means it's your responsibility to calculate your tax liability and submit tax return and make a payment to the Revenue Department by yourself. And later, the Revenue Department officer will check or audit your tax return, and if you have done it incorrectly, they will send you a notice later. But in the first stage, if you know that you have an obligation to pay specific business tax and you have registered specific business tax, the next step is to calculate specific business tax. Under section 91/8 is combine what we have learned before in one provision. Like a person who, if you are a person who liable to specific business tax under section 91/2, for example, if you conduct a banking business, you need to calculate your specific business tax from tax base. What is tax base? Tax base we have discussed in section 91/5, right? And then after you know your tax base, you need to pick the right tax rate. We have 3 different rates, but you need to know which rate that apply to your business activity, which you can have a look at section 91/6 and then calculate the specific business tax that you have to pay to the revenue department. This is your duty regarding specific business tax calculation. As I have mentioned before that the previous section of the Revenue Code just provide for a general method for calculation specific business tax, but for the sale of immovable property and selling of security, they have a specific method of calculation. For sale of immovable property that are subject to specific business tax, you need to look at section 91/8 together with the announcement of the Revenue Department, and you need to calculate in accordance with that method, which is different from the general method. Similar to as well, in case of sale of security in the stock exchange, section 91/9 also provide a specific method for calculation, the specific business tax in the case of sale of security, which is impose an obligation to the brokerage firm which are the member of the stock exchange to do this job. After you calculate your specific business tax, your next duty is to file a specific business tax return and make a payment to the Revenue Department. Actually, the key principle is that specific business tax is a taxable period of the specific business tax is on monthly basis, or the taxable period is a calendar month. This is mean you need to do it every month on monthly basis. So the SPT return must be filed, or the taxpayer of the SPT need to file the tax return on a monthly basis, regardless whether or not the business has income. But you need to do this every month and submit tax return to the tax authority. The SPT tax return and payment must be submitted to the District Revenue Office within 15 days of the following month. This is mean you have to do this every month, and you need to submit within 15 days of the next month. I give you some example that I will show you later. And if taxpayer has more than one place of business, each place of business must be filed its tax return and make the payment separately, unless you get an approval from the Director General. This is mean if you have a branches or different place of business, each place have to submit a SPT tax return separately in their area. And you can look at this provision in section 91/10. The first paragraph of section 91/10 tell you that you need to submit a SPT tax return on monthly basis, and you need to use Portal 40 like it is a tax filing form submitting to the Revenue Department. And second paragraph give you the due date or timing. You need to do this within 15 days of the following month. And paragraph 3 and paragraph 4 tell you about the place where you need to submit tax return, which is like depend on the area that your business is located. For paragraph 5, 6, and 7 is about a special provision in case you are selling immovable property. In this case, you need to not to go to the revenue office, but the land office will be an authority that will collect specific business tax on behalf of the revenue department. So the green one represents the tax return filing for in case of selling of immovable property, which has a special method and special tax authority that have a power that have an authorization to collect SPT on behalf of the revenue department. And that is the this is an example of the timing as we have discussed before in section 19/10 paragraph 2 that SPT is collected on monthly basis and you need to submit tax return and make a payment by the 15th day of next month. For example, you need to calculate your SPT every month. Like for March, you need to submit SPT tax return and make a payment by 15th of April. This is an example of the SPT tax filing. And this is the form. Is a different form with the SPT registration. The previous form is the form that you need to register SPT within 30 days from the commencement of your business. But this form is a tax return that you need to submit to the revenue department each month. So you can see that you need to provide the revenue department with the detail of your business, and you need to tell them which month that this form used, from January, February, March, April until December, and you need to tell them about the type of your business and your tax base and the gross receipt and the rate. They have already provide you the tax rate, and you need to calculate by yourself and tell them the amount of SPT that is you need to pay to the revenue department. So this is an example of the tax filing, SPT tax filing under section 91/10 paragraph 1. So you can see the legal provision in practice in the real world. Okay, and for tax refund, actually in some case, businesses might be able to get a tax refunds. In this case, if you are entitled to get a tax refund, you need to apply to file a claim for a tax refund within 3 years from the day following the last day of the time period during which tax return filing is due. So you have only 3 years. Therefore, if you would like to file a tax refund, you need to do this within this period of time under section 91/11. And as I have mentioned before that in order to assess or to check whether your tax return or tax filing is correct, the revenue department want to know the record of your taxable gross receipt, and in section 91/14 it requires you like a taxpayer to make a report to show a receipt without deduction of any expense to the tax authority as well, because they will be cross-checked with your tax return. So you have to do this under section 91/14. This is an example of the specific business report, but actually there are not a specific form regarding the SPT report. Unlike VAT have a specific form, but for SPT form at the moment, there is no specific or particular form. But whatever you submit to the revenue department, you need to show your income before deduction of expense in accordance with the Revenue Department. This is example. And now the taxpayer duty, we have fulfilled our duty regarding specific business tax, and the next step will be a tax authority duties. After the tax authority duty receive the tax return and tax payment, they will process the tax audit or tax assessment, meaning that the tax authority will scrutinize the assessment and payment of tax by taxpayer or third party to see whether your tax return or your tax payment is correct or not. And after that, they will proceed to a tax correction or tax refund as the case may be. So the assessment, the provision regarding the tax officer assessment authority is provided in Group 5 from Section 91/15, Section 91/16, and Section 91/17. So Section 91/15 it is a provision regarding a case where the assessment official shall assess tax penalty and surcharge. /16 is about the power of assessment officer to require additional other document from the taxpayer. And Section 91/17 is about like in case the SPT is less than 100 baht. Like this provision will be waived for the taxpayer, but it's just 100 baht. It should be more than this. Okay, this is the detail of the case when the assessment officer, like the officer like work for the Revenue Department, shall assess the SPT, penalty, and surcharge. It's like, for example, Section 91/15 say that the officer have a power to assess if it appears that a person who is liable for payment of SPT failed to file the tax return in the time specific by law, which is 15 days from of the following month, right? If you forget or you haven't submitted the tax return, the tax officer have a power to assess your SPT. Or in the second case is that the officer have proof that you has filed, actually you submit the tax filing within the time, but they found that you have submitted the incorrect or the error amounts of tax payable to the tax authority. They have a right to assess your SPT. So in the third case, where a person who is liable for payment of tax have failed to comply with the summon มีนหมายนะคะหมายเหมือนหมายเรียก like an order issued by the assessment officer to answer the questions without reasonable excuse, or they fail to comply to produce an evidence for the purpose of tax calculation. In this case, the tax officer have a power to assess your SPT. And in addition to power to assess your SPT tax amount, Section 19/16 provide the power of the officer, other power of the officer, such as the power to ask for the evidence or documentation, or ask you to come and give them more information regarding your specific business tax. And for Section 91/17 is about just the waiver. It's like in case the any tax month of the tax payable is less than 100 baht. So the law just say that the payment of such tax shall be waived for that tax month, but it should be increased in the future. And after assessment, it is about tax collection process. The tax collection process is just the process that the tax authority just to ensure that there is an actual payment of SPT has been made. And actually, the tax assessment, SPT assessment under the Revenue Code, that the general provision in the first chapter also apply to the SBT. So if the tax officer consider that taxpayer have to pay more SBT, they will notify the amount of tax to the taxpayer to pay within 7 days from the date that the taxpayer received the assessment notice. So if they think that your SBT that you have submit to the tax authority is wrong, so it's like you need to pay more tax, they will send a notice to you and you need to pay the tax within 7 days from the date of you receiving an assessment. And on the other side, in case you pay more than you have to, this is mean you are entitled for a tax refund. This is mean the tax payment or SBT payment is excess or more than what you have to pay. In this case, you are entitled to tax refund, but you need to apply within 3 years, right? And also similar to VAT or other type of taxation, tax law is a public law. This is mean if you are not comply with the law, you can get a punishment. In Group 6, there are 3 main provisions regarding the punishment, including punishment for not registration within 30 days, punishment for not preparing a record that I tell you before, and punishment for preparing a record that does not follow the law. This is a quite critical one and important, but you can have a look at the punishment in section 91/18, section 91/19 and section 91/20. 18 is about registration, 19 is about the record, and 20 is about the the record is not comply with the rules and procedure. And you can see that SBT only have 21 provision, and in case there are anything happen and you doesn't have any provision to apply to the fact in this case, section 91/21 also provide that in case there is no specific provision under Chapter 5 that apply, so the provision of value-added tax that we have learned last week will be applied to the SBT as well, because both share some similarity or common characteristics. And in summary, you need to ask yourself today, what is a specific business tax? A tax that apply to specific or certain type of business that their value added couldn't or difficult to be defined. And you need to ask yourself what type of business that are subject to specific business tax and what type of business which are not subject to SBT or exempted from SBT. What are the tax rate and tax base of SBT? What are the taxpayer registration obligation? The obligation to calculate when to calculate the SBT, when to submit tax filing or tax return, and when to make a payment, and if you haven't complied with this provision, what are the legal sanction? This is all about the specific business tax. And next we have the last type of indirect taxation under the Revenue Code, which is a stamp duty. And conclusion to the lecture. See you in clip video number 4.